donate button.
A nice story from Alfredo from Roanoke. Discovered NPR when he immigrated to the U.S. from Argentina. He knew some English, but had a hard time understanding when people spoke to him. So listening to NPR helped him a lot because the NPR hosts and their guests, and he says still speak, so clearly. Nowadays, I'm used to accents from different regions and states, and I still enjoy the NPR programming. Among the many programs he listens to is The Moth Radio Hour, and interestingly enough, The Moth was not in the United States this past weekend. They were over across the pond, as we would say, maybe close to Ireland. St. Patty's Day it is today. But that's a great program, and just one of the many programs that we pay for because we think that you will enjoy. And if you get some enjoyment from our programs, please help us defer that cost a little bit at a time with your $25 contribution. We had a $1,200 contribution last hour from a listener on our WVTF music side. Anywhere in that range is welcome at this point. And if you have yet to give to the station for the first time, it gets tripled when you call 800-856-8900 or give online at radioiq.org.
Not to flog the weather thing, but you had said dark clouds. And, I've never lived in a place before that had such, interesting and quickly changing weather patterns. And one of the things, just to shout out, our engineers here, so Steven and Sterling and Paxton, who are tirelessly working behind the scenes to keep the signal going. That is one of the many things your support helps to bring you, is this vast infrastructure. And Radio IQ has a very large footprint, and we're very proud of it. But it takes a lot of human power and a lot of electricity and a lot of donor support to keep that going for the entire community. And we need that should things go awry weather-wise or whatnot, to bring that signal to you, because when things go bad, radio is one of the last things standing, and you are helping to maintain that emergency network with your support. So if you can, pay it forward for someone who might not be able to, and yourself, by becoming a sustaining member at radioiq.org. Give whatever you can by clicking the donate button.
It is 2025. Some people say, oh, well, and I know for sure radio is past its golden age, but there are still thousands of people using a radio. As a matter of fact, Nick may be able to attest to this. The National Weather Service still says part of your emergency kit should be a battery-operated radio. Nick Gilmore is giving me the thumbs up on that. That is absolutely true. Still there, still a vital piece of communication equipment, and we're still here in the community thanks to folks who have given in the past. We're here today thanks to the generosity of other previous listeners and contributors. The reason why we're doing this fund drive is to say, hey, come on board. Make a contribution now to ensure that we're here for you in March, April, May, June, July, through the end of December, and through into next year. Next year already, this year, and the Commonwealth of Virginia is elections next year, midterm elections already for the House of Representatives. It doesn't quite stop, but we don't ever want to have the programming stop. You can ensure it with your contribution now. 800-856-8900. Give online at radioiq.org. And thanks in advance for your support.
This is Here and Now. It was a conservation success story. Across the country, duck populations had gone up since the 1970s. Efforts to protect the wetlands where they live had been working. But a new report is warning that ducks are in decline, and they aren't the only birds that scientists are worried about. More than 100 species have lost more than half their populations in the past 50 years. Steve Adair is the chief scientist at Ducks Unlimited, one of the groups that worked on this year's State of the Birds report. Steve, welcome.
Hi, Peter. Great to be with you.
Well, it's good to have you. And in past reports, ducks and other water birds had been this real bright spot. They were the only birds that were showing signs of population growth. What's happening now?
Yeah, so it's really interesting to dig into that more. When you think about birds and their habitat, there are really a couple things that we pay attention to. One is, what is the status of the habitat? Is it declining? What kind of condition it is? The other is, like for water birds especially, is the habitat wet? Are there abundant wetlands out there? So one of the things that are going on with waterfowl and other water birds is in the last 5 to 10 years, their primary breeding grounds have been under drought conditions. And so even though, there are wetland basins still present there and grasslands to nest in, those areas are dry, so the birds don't perform as well. So some of this decline is expected based on those factors.
I see. Now, from your report, I can tell that duck numbers have been declining in an area of the country specifically known as the prairie pothole region around Montana and the Dakotas. Can you just sort of be specific and tell us what's happening to the wetlands there?
Yeah, so that's an area that was glaciated 10,000 years ago by the Wisconsin Glacier. And what happened was when it retreated, it left behind all of these what we call potholes they were chunks of ice either right on the surface of the ground or right underneath it, filled with water. You know, when you had abundant snow and rain, and so that area attracts abundance, millions of breeding waterfowl and water birds every year. Because of that wetland complex, and that has been very dry due to weather conditions for the last 6 or 7 years. Now, the other part of the story that's more concerning is that there is ongoing drainage of wetlands in that landscape. There's ongoing conversion of grasslands to primarily crop production, and so those are habitat features that those birds rely on to be successful. So you kind of have these multiple factors in recent years kind of conspiring against the success of those birds.
Is there a species of duck in particular that you're most worried about?
Yeah, we continue to be most worried about northern pintails in that landscape. When we've had good conditions, they have not recovered as well as some of the other species have, and they have this tendency where they will nest in cropland from the prior year. And when they do that, their nests are on the ground when farm implements are out operating, and many of them get destroyed. And so they seem particularly susceptible to, those type of practices where other birds have avoided nesting in cropland landscape. So we wish we could train them to do otherwise, but it seems to be a pretty genetically wired behavior of theirs.
You've described a couple of different convergence of issues here, drought and also some destruction of wetlands through agriculture. And I know that groups like yours have been trying for decades to preserve these wetlands. Ducks Unlimited protected 1 million acres of wetlands last year alone. Is the destruction of the habitat happening faster than you can save it?
It is, Peter. These are big global economic conditions, mostly driven by, prices of corn and soybeans across the world where, you can't blame landowners. It's more profitable for many of them to grow corn and soybeans as opposed to cattle, which, a cattle operation that has grasslands and wetlands is more friendly to ducks and other water birds. So it's big economic conditions that are doing that. And so that's sort of the active playing field on that landscape is how can we, have wetlands be seen as valuable assets to landowners so they'll maintain them.
Well, clearly, you're a person who cares a lot about this issue. You've dedicated your life and career to ducks and their well-being. Why?
Yeah, great question. I was one of those little kids that was just fascinated with the outdoors growing up. And, every chance I got, I was stomping around in a water puddle or, chasing rabbits or birds around the backyard. And I think they're really important to our well-being as people. I think they, are part of our mental and physical and spiritual health. And so, I've been really focused on trying to help keep wild places and wild things around in my professional career.
Okay. Steve Adair, Chief Scientist at Ducks Unlimited, speaking with us today from Sheridan, Wyoming. Steve, thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter.
Here and Now is a production of NPR and WBUR. I'm Peter O'Dowd in Phoenix.
And I'm Scott Tong in Washington, D.C. This is Here and Now.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and Insurify, an online insurance agent that brings car insurance companies to you. You can compare real-time
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our 2:00 p.m. session for City Council on March 17th. It's great to see you all today. I'll ask our clerk, Ms. McCoy, to please call the roll.
Mr. Volleson?
Here.
Mrs. Powers?
Here.
Mr. Hagan?
Here.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones?
Here.
Vice Mayor McGuire?
Here.
Mr. Nash?
Here.
And Mayor Cobb.
Here, and we are all present. Thank you. Our invocation this afternoon will be delivered by the Reverend Joanna Pastor, pastor of Green Memorial United Methodist Church, and then I will lead us in the flag salute, Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand.
I do indeed bring you greetings from the people of Green Memorial, just our neighbors, the block over, and I thought it fitting to begin our time of prayer together on this St. Patrick's Day with words from a Celtic blessing from the first millennium. So let us pray. You are the peace of all things calm. You are the place to hide from harm. You are the light that shines in dark. You are the heart's eternal spark. You are the door that's open wide. You are the guest who waits inside. You are the stranger at the door. You are the calling of the poor. You are my Lord and with me still. You are my love, keep me from ill. You are the light, the truth, the way. God, who is the way, we come to you praying with open hearts for the work before us, asking for your presence beside us. Remind us again we don't go at this alone. Bless our city, we pray, and fill us with tenacious love to help those on the margin, connect over that which divides, and encourage the brokenhearted. We pray for a peace to reside over Roanoke, for each child to know well-being and each family to feel secure. We pray you will slow us down enough to listen for understanding, and slow us down enough to see you in the midst of all people. God, be with each person who makes our city incredible, with sanitation workers, parks and rec staff, teachers and administrators of our incredible schools, guidance counselors and staff doing needed work, fire, police, and rescue, doctors and nurses and staff at hospitals and care facilities, our downtown ambassadors, our homeless assistance team, coaches and mentors, hospitality staff, artists and business leaders, farmers and mental health professionals, and so many others. Give discerning hearts to us, O God, and wise minds, as decisions are made each and every day, and equip us for the work before us. We pray this in the name of our Creator. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Reverend Pastor. A couple of announcements to share this afternoon. City Council meetings will be televised live and replayed on RVTV Channel 3 on Thursdays at 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and video streamed through Facebook Live at facebook.com Roanoke VA. City Council meetings are offered with closed captioning for the deaf or hard of hearing. The Council of the City of Roanoke is seeking applications for various vacancies on council-appointed authorities, boards, commissions, and committees. You can access the online application form through the city's website at www.roanokeva.gov. For presentations today, as many of you know, we've started doing council shout-outs to things that we have seen or heard or witnessed in between our meetings, so we're going to do that today. I'll start to give my colleagues a little bit of time in case I caught them off guard. Two things I want to shout out. One is I'm a part of the Mill Mountain Advisory Board, and we got an update from Nikki Voudron, who is the executive director of the zoo, and she shared her gratitude not only for community response in helping raise funds for them to do significant cleanup after the storm, but to all of the volunteers who helped clean up particularly a lot of fallen trees, a lot of debris on the east side of the zoo. So I want to commend citizens who stepped up to help. And also wanted to congratulate the Roanoke Refugee Partnership, which was formed 8 years ago. They had their annual celebration last night to a packed room at 5 Points Music Sanctuary, and it was really inspiring to hear the great work they do with our refugee community. So I'll start down here with Ms. Powers. Okay, right across.
So I'd like to shout out to Mayor Cobb for his summit that was last week, the Mayor's Summit. I attended that. There were over 100 people there. It was great. I heard a lot of compliments afterwards, how much the business people that attended enjoyed that, especially having city staff there that could help them understand things about code enforcement, paying taxes, and so forth. So congratulations, Mayor Cobb. It was well received.
My shout out is for Zariah Bell and Lily Katana. They were both students that came up to the National League of Cities to take part in their program, their leadership program. It was great to meet them and be able to interact with them at the event. And also thank you to former Councilwoman Anita James Price for being the chaperone for them as well.
That's great. Thank you.
I want to acknowledge the William Fleming girls basketball team for making it all the way to Richmond for the state championship game. They came a little short, but getting to that stage, getting to the finals, just being in that conversation deserves so much credit because of their dedication, their hard work, and their sacrifices, and their coaches as well. So I just wanted to shout them out and say that next season I'm going to be rooting for y'all, and next year we'll get it.
Thank you. And we're working to officially acknowledge them at an upcoming council meeting too. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to say thank you to everyone with the downtown business groups and everyone in the city on staff that had a role in pulling together the St. Patrick's Day Parade. I had a chance to walk in that with some of my colleagues up here and had a really great time. And I know that there's a lot that goes into pulling that off. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that helped helped allow us to have another successful St. Patrick's Day Parade.
Thank you.
That was my idea. Well, I just want to add that I would like to thank the ambassador program. They're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to give a shout out to Roanoke Pluckers. They started up earlier this month, and they've had, I think, about 3 or 4 thus far. I was able to attend a couple and found a couple of Pluck socks, so feel free to help out with the city. And yeah, they're doing amazing work.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. We'll move now to the hearing of citizens upon public matters, and this is an opportunity for any citizen to come and share your ideas, your thoughts, your concerns, your questions. All matters are referred to our city manager for response, recommendation, or report back to council she may deem appropriate. Madam Clerk, do we have citizens signed up to speak today?
Yes, we do. We have 3 speakers.
Okay.
And I'll call them in the order they should come. Christina Boyd, followed by David Gardner and Brian McConnell.
Is Ms. Boyd or Ms. Gardner here? All right. Mr. McConnell, come on up. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Cobb. Council members, Madam City Manager, Legal Counsel, thanks once again for affording me an opportunity to air personal concerns relating to both my recent and similarly related ongoing experience as a Roanoke citizen. Also, and while various sitting members of council currently present may already possess some familiarity with my prior appearances before this body, one of the more notable perhaps occurring on October 7th of this last year. Today, I hope to effectively express continued misgivings on my part involving the integrity of local governance, interaction, and communication involving interrelated matters over an extended period of time now. As I've noted previously, however, and with former city manager Chris Morell's dedicated support in arranging meeting space during the main library's renovation in 2014, a group of 10 to 15 community members registered for and subsequently attended MIT's inaugural launch of Roanoke's ULab Hub in January of 2015. I'm bringing this to your attention today because, having learned of and subsequently registered for the U School's Presencing Series 2025, Sensing and Actualizing the Future, that is in need of us, last Thursday, on Friday morning, I visited the city clerk's office and subsequently requested a chance to share this information with you today. Yet, and as Mayor Cobb and Council Member Volosin may remember from our shared elevator ride together that same morning, well, it started to get a little complicated from that point forward, because at that point, as I typically do on a Friday morning, headed over to the library and spoke briefly with the main branch library manager in passing along this information of the Presencing series. It was basically a 6-week series from April 17th through June 26th. It's a 90-minute workshop, essentially interactive workshop that occurs Thursday morning from 10 to 11:30 every other Thursday beginning on April 17th through the 26th. So I just spoke with Charlie and asked about whether there was conference room space available to reserve for the open event to the public. At which point she initially said, yeah, sure, we can schedule that out, and then said, oh, no, I thought you said Monday, it's Thursday, no. And ironically for me, Blue Ridge Literacy apparently has on Thursday mornings all of the conference rooms scheduled out, so there's no conference rooms available. Charlie also said, but by that time, by the 17th, she hopes that Virginia Works will no longer be taking, but she's not able to schedule and commit to that for our purposes, and basically left it that I'm just to get back to her. 10 years of this, I had full support by Chris Morell back, 11 years ago. We went through this. And Chris, the library was under renovation at that point. Chris made sure that we had community support for that event. Is something happened? Are we going in the wrong direction? Am I not getting the information? Because it sounds and smells like bureaucratic BS to me, quite frankly. I'm not going to use any more divisive language than that. I'm at a loss because I have a sense. I've maintained close interactive relations and communication with MIT and principals at MIT since that time. And all of those resources, they could be benefiting members of Roanoke's community, and they're not. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell, and thank you for making us aware of that program and the history of it. I do know that the Virginia Career Works is having their grand opening this week, so hopefully that will free up some space very soon in some of the conference rooms for the library, and at least reopen some of that space access.
Thank you.
Okay?
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, yes, Mr. Gardner.
My apologies, sir. I didn't hear you.
That's all right. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to say good afternoon. My address is in reference to the recent replanning of the area of Gus Nix Boulevard in Northeast. I'd like to bring to attention a growing concern within our neighborhood of King Street regarding the recent traffic lane redesign of Gus Nix Boulevard. While this change was initially intended to alleviate congestion and improve traffic flow and safety, it has unintentionally created several challenges for those of us living in the surrounding area of King Street. First, the increased traffic volume in the residential streets has led to a rise in noise pollution, making it difficult for families to enjoy the peace and quiet we once had. The constant stream of vehicles has also made our roads less safe for pedestrians and children, as the speeding with the unfamiliar roads within the area has led to more close calls. The speed limit on King Street is 30 miles per hour, while on Gus Nix it's 35. This small difference is unintentionally leading to people traveling at higher speeds through our neighborhood thinking the speed limits are the same. Additionally, the once serene atmosphere of our neighborhood is now overshadowed by the constant hum of engines and the wear and tear on our roads. This has affected not only our quality of life, but also the overall appeal of our community. As we continue to adjust to these changes, it's important that we address these issues to ensure that both the needs of the greater area and the well-being of our neighborhood are taken into consideration. I urge local authorities to explore possible solutions to restore the balance between necessary traffic flow and tranquility of our community. I ask this council to consider, rather than a traffic lane redesign of Gus Nix, maybe a speed limit change, such as Vinton did, be considered for the area to slow traffic in general. This would result in less people using King Street as a cut-through, and Gus Nix being an overall safer route. I thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you very much. City Manager Turner, is it my understanding that the traffic pattern, the cones are now down? I read something that they're down, that this was a 2-week test period. Is that?
Yes, I just forwarded an update to you and the rest of council, and we do have staff here that can provide some comments should you need some comments this morning. But I did provide an update to you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Do we have staff here that can
We do. Mr.
just give
Campbell.
us a brief update? I know the testing period just finished, and you're gathering additional information, but I think we'd love to hear anything you can share with us today.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about Gus Nix. I understand this frustration that Mr. Gardner has, and certainly respect the various points that he made regarding noise pollution, speed, and cut-through traffic in his neighborhood. As we looked at Gus Nix in general is what is considered part of Roanoke's high injury network, meaning that we have a significant number of crashes out there that result in serious injury or even fatality. It's important to look at the serious injuries. These can be life-altering events for those that are involved. They may result in loss of mobility. They may result in impaired cognitive ability, or even the potential to live or work without assistance. And so certainly it leads us to want to do something. So as we look at it from a safe systems approach, we consider the 3 E's. A lot more to the safe systems approach, but we're really talking about 3 E's. We're talking about engineering, education, and enforcement. And so from an engineering and education standpoint, one of the things that has worked across the Commonwealth and in our own community and the nation is lane reconfiguration. Many of these roadways were designed with motorist behaviors that are very different than they are today. Speed and volumes are far more excessive, and how motorists interact with each other is not the same way that it was when this Gus Nix corridor was designed. And so as we look at a traffic solution out there, we're also keeping in mind the width of the roadway and the right-of-way we do have. We have found that adding a center turn lane can significantly reduce crash volume and significantly reduce the probability of a serious or fatal crash. And so by adding a center turn lane, we were able to bring that down. Unfortunately, the right-of-way out there is not sufficient in order to add that without a significant cost to taxpayers. And so hence the demonstration project that we ran for the last 2 weeks. And I understand how motorists feel with the number of barrels out there. It's hard to visualize what we are trying to do with the barrels and cones, but really as engineers and as traffic designers, we're trying to coordinate signals and understand how things behave in a real system rather than on paper. And we were able to collect some valuable information. So what we learned during the 2 weeks of the study, one, we learned that traffic volumes during peak hours remained pretty consistent with pre-demonstration traffic volumes. We did see across 3 of the 4 locations some decrease in traffic volume, which would be consistent with what Mr. Gardner was saying, of about 10% or less. So there certainly was some cut-through traffic that happened with that. However, daily peak volume, or daily volumes remain pretty consistent throughout the study. Daily volume in each direction ends up being about 12,000 vehicles per day in each direction. And we are pretty consistent with pre-demonstration and post-demonstration. But what we also saw was that we were able to marshal and platoon vehicles into patterns that were able to move consistently through the corridor in such a way that traffic times during peak runs only increased on average by 49 seconds. Traffic travel times actually improved in off-peak hours because we were able to more effectively marshal vehicles through in a consistent speed. We didn't have vehicles stopping to turn right or left. We didn't have inconsistent speeds ranging anywhere from 25 miles an hour to 45 miles an hour plus along that corridor. So as we close out the demonstration project and we pulled up the barrels last night, we were able to take a look at this data. We're continuing to collect some data post demonstration this week, and we'll have some messaging to put out on that, and we'll be able to make some recommendations to the manager on next steps with regard to Gus Nix.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you for your opportunity, Mayor.
Thank you, and thank you for that update. And thanks to citizens' patience. I know it was tested over and over again, and we also all know that, because we've certainly been working through this with the Wasena Bridge being down, that even side streets and neighborhood streets that typically are very quiet and have very minimal traffic suddenly become these major thoroughfares and create all kinds of concerns. So I'm glad we were able to wrap up the test, and at least some peace might return for now. But Mr. Gardner, thank you for bringing that to our attention. And Mr. Campbell, thank you for the update. All right, I think we're ready then to move on to our consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by members of the council and will be enacted by one motion. There's no separate discussion of items unless an item is requested to be removed. So I will entertain a motion in a second. Actually, hold tight. I've got to want to point out a couple of closed meetings in the consent agenda. We have 2 requests from the city attorney to consult with legal counsel regarding a certain legal matter requiring the provision of legal advice by the city attorney concerning a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the business or industry's interest in locating or expanding its facilities in the community. And that's pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A5 Code of Virginia. And to consult with legal counsel regarding actual litigation where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body, again pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A7 Code of Virginia. With that, I'll entertain a motion and second for approval of the consent agenda.
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the consent agenda is approved. We'll move now to our regular agenda. We have no public hearings this afternoon, so we'll move into petitions and communications. And first of all, I'm pleased to call on our city manager, who will introduce our speaker from the Roanoke Valley Allegheny Regional Commission.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of council. I want to introduce Mr. Jeremy Holmes. the Executive Director of Roanoke Valley Allegheny Regional Commission. Mr. Holmes will provide an overview of the Commission's history and present updates on key initiatives, including infrastructure, housing, the Virginia Opioid Abatement Authority, and upcoming projects.
Welcome, Mr. Holmes. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Mayor Cobb, members of council, Ms. Turner. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. I'm going to provide a brief update on some of the projects the Regional Commission has undertaken over the past year. Not, fortunately for you, a comprehensive list of all the projects, but highlights of some of the projects that we've done that have had an impact on the city of Roanoke, and a couple of the things that are ongoing that we expect to wrap up later this year or this fall, in which you are also involved. I always like to take this opportunity to do a little bit of a refresher for what exactly is the Regional Commission for those of you who may not be familiar with us or have participated in Regional Commission programs in the past. The Regional Commission is one of 21 planning districts charged by the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, to assist our member localities address issues of greater than local significance. So that's the language in the code that basically our job is to help our member localities, and you can see the map there, who falls into the Regional Commission service area, look at things like transportation, housing, economic development, environmental activities that extend beyond the city's border. So what are those things that are challenges and opportunities for the city of Roanoke that are also challenges and opportunities for your neighbor, and that we're better off kind of working on those things together to come up with the most efficient plans, projects, and solutions to address those. So the majority of our work, we try to make sure has 2 or more local governments involved in those plans and projects, but we also do a fair amount of local technical assistance, as you'll see here. As you can imagine, about half of our work is in the area of transportation. That falls under the Transportation Planning Organization housed at the Commission. But we do work in housing. You'll see some examples of that in a little bit. Environmental, stormwater, as I said, community development, even opioid addiction, addressing that recovery ecosystem, kind of all falls under our work because we know those are all things that cross jurisdictional boundaries. I think we're a pretty good investment. For every dollar that we bring in local dues, we're able to leverage that against $11 in state, federal, and other resources that go to fund our plans and programs. And in some cases, as you'll see in a moment, even to fund the construction of affordable housing right here in the city of Roanoke. So we do work to make sure we bring state and federal resources home. As a matter of fact, one of our primary roles is to serve as a liaison between many state and federal agencies, and I'll talk about our role, for example, with the Economic Development Administration when we get to the end of this presentation. You've heard me say we a lot. I do mean our staff. Our staff are amazing, 15 amazing people who we work with, but when I say we, I really do mean you, our elected officials, the folks who participate on the Regional Commission Board, who sit around that table every month. Without your participation, we wouldn't know what you need, and you wouldn't have these opportunities to engage with your neighbors to identify what are the major issues that our region is facing. So we appreciate our newly elected Vice Chair, Mr. Volleson, Vice Mayor McGuire is now serving on the commission, Mayor Cobb serving on the SEDS committee, and all of you who participate in our various committees, plans, programs, et cetera. Without you, we couldn't get this work done. So I'm going to highlight 3 different projects that I think just show the breadth of the work that happens at the Regional Commission. So the first, I'm going to talk about our electric vehicle infrastructure study. This wrapped up last year. We have not formally launched this, so the materials are available as we've been sort of fielding what the federal picture is on electric vehicle infrastructure funding, but these materials are here and available for your use. I think we're going to talk about this maybe at the next commission meeting. But the purpose of this particular study was to complement work that had been happening at the VDOT level that was focused just on what they call their alternative fuel corridors, which are 81 and 64, where they were primarily looking at what was the provision for charging station infrastructure just along those corridors. In other words, like the Sheets and the Loves and so forth at the off-ramps, was there sufficient infrastructure there? What we wanted to look at is making sure that the communities in our service area weren't missing out on either understanding what the needs were and the challenges of what is the right kind of infrastructure, what are the trends in electric vehicle usage and technology. But also we know that unlike filling up your car at the gas pump, which takes about 30 seconds or a minute, a charge takes somewhere between 10 to 30 minutes. And we think that that's a tourism visitation opportunity. And so we wanted to make sure the towns and cities in our commission area had the resources to look at, where do we want to draw these people? How do we put the right infrastructure in? How do we prepare our grid to be able to handle a whole bunch of electric vehicle charging stations? And you had the materials to look at land use and market decisions to see where did you want to draw those folks. So you can see, for example, there's a map that's available that highlights what some of our analysis on the best opportunities or best needs for charging station infrastructure. And this report looks at everything you might need from again, planning, zoning perspective to kind of set that up. And again, understanding where we're going with electric vehicles. So we wanted to look at this from an economic development and visitor perspective, not necessarily just, is there a Tesla station at a Sheetz where you could charge your car up, but how are we going to bring visitors, make sure that we are on their app and they know that they can come here and charge their vehicle and visit while they're here. Another area I mentioned we are working in is housing. A couple of years ago, we did complete the regional comprehensive housing study that looked at both our region and specifically the city of Roanoke at the need for additional units of affordable housing. Everyone knows that's not controversial, that there's more housing needed everywhere. In 2021, we were part of a new program through Virginia Housing that awarded dollars just to planning districts to develop local subsidized housing programs that met our needs, where we developed the program, developed a competitive process for awarding funds to developers to build units that met the 80% AMI requirement for Virginia Housing, for affordable housing. We developed this program. We had two primary awardees, the city of Roanoke and the city of Covington. As you can see here, we've got a number of partners that we worked with the city, Habitat for Humanity, Restoration Housing, Roanoke Redevelopment Housing Authority. Those are all some folks that were initially awarded, and as we've had other funds available, we've helped support other projects along the way to kind of close the last gap in capital stack to make sure that some of these projects could get built. In all, by the time we're done, there will be $1.4 million invested in 37 units. Many of those are Habitat for Humanity single-family units, but there are multifamily units and adaptive reuse across Roanoke. This is a program that Virginia Housing has launched a second round of, so they found it very successful to work with regional partners to develop regional programs, and we're hoping they will continue it. It's much more competitive going forward, but this is just an example of some areas where we're trying to actually bring funding home and actually meet a need in addition to the planning we've done to identify that need. And then finally, our work with the Opioid Abatement Authority and the Roanoke Valley Collective Response. This program came under the commission about 3 years ago. It was previously an all-volunteer effort that we staffed, again, because we saw the opioid crisis as being something that crossed borders and addressed things like workforce, housing, infrastructure, transportation, and so it met a lot of the areas that we were already working on in the commission. What we did this year, sort of the most recent activity under the Abatement Authority grant application process, was working with city staff and Roanoke County staff on a pre-application process. So before folks came to you with ideas for what they might be interested in putting forth to the Abatement Authority this year, they worked through a committee of the collective response of experts in these fields that sort of looked at these projects and scored them with how well they met the blueprint for action, which is the regional kind of strategy for addressing the opioid crisis. Not necessarily to prioritize them for funding, but to give the local government staff just some information on what needs were being met, and maybe more importantly, what needs weren't being met. So the next step that we're taking with that internally is what were those projects that aren't getting funded? What are the needs in the region that no one is leading, that there's not a program or an organization behind? And because we're the regional commission, even though we're working primarily with the city of Roanoke and Roanoke County through the opioid abatement grant, our main focus is how do we make sure services are delivered where they're needed so that the city of Roanoke doesn't become sort of this gravity that pulls all of the service provision here, where we know that things like recovery housing and workforce training are also needed in Botetourt and Allegheny County and Franklin County. And how do we make sure that we can help those localities through grant technical assistance and so forth, access funding and develop those programs there so those citizens can get help where they live, where they're needed. So real quick, and I went over that at a very high level, so I apologize if that was too fast, but I wanted to show those are some things that we've just wrapped up this year that have involved the city of Roanoke. And again, I wanted to show the breadth of the different kinds of projects that we undertake. A couple of things that are in process right now that you're participating in. The first is a regional truck parking study. This is falling under our transportation program, and we're looking at, with the growth of freight transportation and on-time delivery and what was often resulting as trucks reaching their hours of service limits and parking wherever they can while they wait for the distribution center to open. And sometimes that place is not a very safe place. So we're right now undertaking a survey of the region, working with trucking industry to identify what that traffic looks like and why truckers are making the parking decisions they are, and to be able to present some policies, possibly local, possibly statewide, for how we better address the unsafe conditions that that's often causing. We're working on our pre-disaster hazard mitigation plan. This is a required plan under FEMA. This happens at a regional level, but it's an important precondition for receiving funding, and the city has received a number of projects, including the Low Water Bridge and others, through this FEMA program that requires this plan to be in place and active before that funding is available. I sometimes point to a number of years ago, our neighbors in Lynchburg had a tornado hit, and they had let this plan lapse, and they were not able to receive any funding for the cleanup afterwards because they did not have an active plan in place. So this is something that is within our role as liaison to VDEM and FEMA that we use to help the region to make sure that you get funding, ideally before disasters hit, to mitigate those things, but also when necessary afterwards. And the last, and I know Mayor Cobb is very familiar with this, is the update of our 5-year comprehensive economic development strategy. This is also within our role as a primary liaison with the Federal Economic Development Administration. This is a plan that identifies the region's primary economic development goals that will, in this year particularly, we work on this update, focus on key projects that we will pursue funding for. Right now, we've got, for example, a list of 143 projects. It's hard to say that 143 projects is a priority list, so we're going to work to boil those down across a couple of areas. This document is not just used by EDA, but it's used by several other federal agencies, and even we learned Go Virginia sometimes uses this as part of their decision-making process to award funds. So we're working with the city and all of our regional partners to do this 5-year update. Puts us in a good position to receive funding from EDA and other federal agencies, but also help us focus on what our real economic development needs are for the region. So those are 3 things that are currently in play. Most of those are going to wrap up this fall between August and October. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this afternoon, give you these updates. You're always welcome. We're just next door. You're welcome to come attend a meeting at any time and learn more about what we're doing at the commission. But in the interim, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the commission or any of the projects I just talked about.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes, for that great overview and update. I'll actually turn to our 2 commissioners first to see if they have any questions or follow-up.
I don't actually have any questions because I know that there are a lot more projects that Jeremy's working on. I just wanted to say thank you to you and your staff. I've been on the regional commission for probably about 7 years now, and it's been great to watch it grow and continue to make sure that we're all working together, especially on transportation, which is very important to how everybody gets around. So I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you for coming and speaking with us about it. I hope my colleagues here will join us for a meeting, too.
Absolutely.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Really appreciate it. I had kind of a specific question about the EV infrastructure implementation. I want to first say I appreciate the way you're looking at that in terms of it being an opportunity to bring people into town off of the interstate to visit and maybe stay for lunch or stay for the day. I was wondering, do we have currently a map of EV charging stations in the city of Roanoke that's publicly available?
I believe VDOT has a map. I can't promise how up-to-date that is because the charging stations are a combination of private, and some of them are on private land, some of them are on public land, and we don't always get that information updated when the private stations go in. But I can see what the VDOT map is and send that to you. We do not have one that's locally housed for charging infrastructure. But I'll send you, I can find out what's out there and send that to you.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
All right. Other questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Next, I'm pleased to welcome Emily Reburn, the Executive Director of Hospitality House of the Blue Ridge. I've invited her to come and share about some important news related to their growth and expansion here in the city. So welcome, Emily.
Thank you so much. My name is Emily Reburn. I am the Executive Director of the Hospitality House of the Blue Ridge. Thank you so much, Mayor Cobb, for inviting me to speak. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. And today I'm going to share some updates about our project and then a few things that we are expecting in the future that are quite exciting. First, I'd like to start with just sharing with you what a hospitality house is. I think that's an important first step. Some of you may be familiar with how a Ronald McDonald House works, in that it is a place of refuge for folks who are coming to receive medical care. In the case of a Ronald McDonald House, that might be a child. A hospitality house is very similar to that, which means it's a place of lodging, temporary lodging, a place of comfort where you can receive meals and commune with other people that are in a similar situation. And this is for folks that are coming from more than 50 miles in our region to visit our medical centers here in Roanoke, Virginia. So we've already seen this work with other hospitality houses across the United States. And I'd like to share with you a little bit more about that today. I'll start with a little bit of background. We actually have been around since 2019. In 2017, our founding member was with her father in a hospitality house in Winston-Salem called the CQ House, where they had to visit from Marion, Virginia on a regular basis so that he could receive treatment for a very common form of leukemia. Unfortunately, this is Charlie here. Charlie succumbed to his disease, and in those final days before he did, he shared with his daughter Terry and Julian, who's our founding board member, hey, this has been a really great experience for us to be down here in the CQ house while I receive treatment. Is there anything like this in Roanoke, Virginia? The answer was, no, there's not anything like this in Roanoke, Virginia. Well, why is that? So this began the seed of thought for Terry Ann, and in 2019, she developed our 501c3 and began to ignite this passion in others by forming our board of advisors and our board of directors. She also started a GoFundMe to just test the waters and see what the interest was in bringing a hospitality house to the Roanoke Valley. It was in this year that we also joined the Healthcare Hospitality Network, which is not a governing body, but it is a network of other hospitality houses in the United States to share best practices and what has worked in their own houses. In 2020, we started to socialize and spread the word about what we were doing. We did this through primarily Facebook, as that seems to be the best method for communicating what we were after. Terry Ann also spoke a couple of times on the news about her vision, and that's how she and I got together, and I joined the board at that time. So we've been at this for quite a while, but I would say that 2020 was a really great year for spreading the word and getting others to get involved with our mission. You'll see these ladies right here on the left. They actually raised $15,000 to support us, and they did this through a number of different fundraisers for their friend Susie, who was going through breast cancer at the time. So we got through our bake sale phase and worked with a local consultant to figure out if we are working on the right method for asking what we need and figuring out what our needs are in this community. We went through a number of different processes during a 6-month period, including site visits to other hospitality houses in our region. Again, scouring the HHN national data. We did our own needs assessment, interviewing a number of people throughout the valley, including our healthcare, our hospitals in the area. And then we started to look at what construction might look like for a facility. I want to share with you that this is new to Roanoke as an idea, but not new across the nation. There are over 200 hospitality houses across the nation. However, you'll notice that in Virginia, there are a few scattered about, but nothing in the Roanoke Valley, which we feel is a huge miss given our 3 wonderful hospitals and the services that they provide. And of course, we know that in Southwest Virginia, about 1.1 million residents reside and are coming to our local hospitals for care. So here's what we experienced at other hospitality houses as we made our way around different site visits. We know that it's a home away from home. We know that it provides comfort and community in a time of need. It is sustained through generosity, meaning that much of the funding is coming through grants, guest stays, and other donations. We know that it's a healing environment, and we know it's volunteer and community driven. Here's a couple of statistics that we found out. I'll point to the one to the far right, which I think is most impactful. This is a survey of residents who have stayed at a hospitality house across the nation, and we know that 83.8% of those folks interviewed reported a patient's physical healing to be positively impacted by staying at a hospitality house. A little bit of information about our financial outlook in our first 1 to 2 years. We know that our annual revenue is supported over 50% by guest stays. So you might have some questions in your mind right now about what that means exactly. Across the nation, the guest amount might range anywhere from $5 a night up to $50 to $55 a night, and sometimes even a bit more than that. So that will be what our rates will be, of course, on the sliding scale based on need. Flash forward to 2023 and 2024, our needs began to grow. And we formed a partnership with a local hotel. The Holiday Inn at Tanglewood serves as our current housing partner. So we do not have a local facility right now. We are serving all of our guests that find us on the internet through a Google search. We are serving them through the Holiday Inn at Tanglewood and continue to serve them through donations. In 2023 and 2024, we served over 350 nights from folks from 7 different states and 32 different counties. I will list those here, with the ones in yellow being identified as high-risk counties for folks that are coming to Roanoke regularly and oftentimes do not have the means to stay in a hotel for those caregivers. So I'm very excited to share that we made big progress in 2025. By going under contract with a local building that I'm sure is very familiar with all of you. This is 2110 Carolina Avenue. And we are really excited about the potential for this particular property to serve our needs. We are hoping to create 25 rooms for guests to be able to stay in. We're hoping to create a common area in the bottom floor of this 3-story building that will support community and healing through quiet spaces, through a communal kitchen, through a living space that is theirs for the duration that they might be in Roanoke caring for their loved one. And right now we are in a due diligence period to make sure that we're dotting all the i's and crossing all the t's on ensuring that this is the best property for our purposes. So we are in progress for that right now and anticipating closing on May 1st. So now I'd like to share what our anticipated, at least preliminary designs look like for this particular building. We're very excited working with Balzer & Associates to create a space that promotes healing for patients who are coming to Roanoke Valley for medical care and of course their caregivers. Here's an example of the first floor. As I mentioned before, so much of a hospitality house is based on healing and being around those who are also going through a similar situation. So we are very focused on creating a very warm and inviting home-like atmosphere on the bottom level of this building. And the second and third floor will be primarily used as guest rooms. We are sneaking in some quiet spaces like a meditation room, a laundry room for guests to be able to take care of laundry in those unexpected extended stays. And then on the top, we are very excited that we are planning to have some green space built in the form of a rooftop terrace where folks are able to actually look directly onto Roanoke Memorial Hospital and Mill Mountain and hopefully find some time for refuge. What we have ahead, as I mentioned before, in January, we went under contract under this property. We are expecting a close date of May 1st. We are needing $585,000 to come to closing, and we are making good progress on that with just under half already pledged for our purposes. In June, we are expecting a public phase where we will continue the fundraising for our efforts. In January, we expect to break ground with the need for fundraising for $3.5 million. And in September, we are expecting to open our doors with a continuation of that fundraising for a total of $5.5 million. So what we're asking our community members to help us with is to help us move from stealth mode, which we've been in for the last 6 years and serving lots of folks within our region, into understanding what we're working through, what we're working on, and helping us to spread the word and continue to work on fundraising. Also continue to work on community support from organizations like churches, Boys and Girls Clubs, Boy Scouts, social clubs, and so forth. So that's the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you so much. Is there any questions that you have for me?
Questions, Vice Mayor?
Thank you very much, Ms. Rayburn. I had a couple of quick questions. I guess I'd start by saying I think this is a really wonderful idea and program. My mom volunteers every week with the Ronald McDonald House, and I would share that a couple of years ago, I live near a park, and there also live near Old Southwest Rehab, and there was someone that one day showed up and was sleeping under the magnolia tree in the park. And some of the parents nearby were concerned and got activated and finally approached the gentleman. And the reason he was sleeping under the magnolia tree is that his mother was at the Old Southwest Rehab and he couldn't afford a place to stay while she was there for some weeks getting better. So, you know, that tells me that there is a need for something like this. I guess I had two questions, and sorry for not knowing the answer to this. What is the current use of that property, and is it generating property tax revenue?
The current use is vacancy. It's not being used at this time, and so right now I don't know the answer to the property tax question.
Do we know if it was previously a nonprofit? Was it?
It was not a previous nonprofit, I don't believe.
River Ridge Dermatology, and then they moved over to where Donnie D's and Brandon.
Okay.
That's correct.
Do you anticipate that you would be seeking a property tax exemption?
Yes.
Okay. And my second question was, Are you all looking at, in terms of like longer-term financial sustainability, anything like solar to offset your energy costs, or lower no-flow toilets to minimize your water use, or what are you looking at in terms of, or are you looking at anything like that?
That's part of our due diligence period that we're working through right now. So we are working with a construction agency that is interested in helping us in any way possible with that long-term sustainability, energy-wise and efficiency-wise.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Good question. Other questions? All right, well,
I
thank
have
you.
one additional
go ahead.
comment, and this is for Vice Mayor McGuire. Your comment about the individual that's sleeping underneath a tree is exactly why we're doing what we're doing. We know that people sleep in waiting rooms at the hospital. We know they're sleeping in parking garages. We know they're sleeping in their vehicles. And it's a very, very trying time for people to be able to find funds for finding a comfortable place to stay, and the impact on their stress and anxiety is massive. So the outward effects of being able to provide that lodging is so important, and it's exactly why we're doing what we're doing. So thank you for bringing that up.
And I would just add, Emily, with the new cardiac care center opening, and then in a year or two, the new cancer center, as healthcare needs expand and more people are coming to this area, having a good option like this for them to stay, particularly for long periods of time, is really valuable.
Yep.
So,
thank you.
thank you for being here today. We'll move now to item 7, which is reports of city officers and the city manager, and we have a number of items recommended for action. Item A is the acceptance and appropriation of the 2024 BJA fiscal year 24 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, the JAG program. There is one measure, an ordinance, and I'll entertain a motion and second.
So moved. Yeah. Second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
Yes. An ordinance authorizing the acceptance of the 2024 BJA FY 2024 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program, local solicitation made to the city of Roanoke by the United States Department of Justice, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute any necessary documents necessary to accept such grant, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
Thank you. Ms. Turner, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just a couple things. The grant funds will be used for subscriptions to crime detection software. This will increase the capacity for detection and investigation in criminal behavior in our city.
Great. Any questions or discussion from council? All right. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the ordinance is adopted. Item B is the acceptance and appropriation of the fiscal year 24 lead-based paint reduction grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. We have one measure, an ordinance, and I'll entertain a motion and second.
Move the ordinance.
Second.
Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
Yes. An ordinance authorizing the acceptance of the HUD Office of Lead Hazard, am I on the right measure here? Okay, I'm sorry. I'll start again. And an ordinance authorizing the acceptance of the HUD Office of Lead Hazard Control in Healthy Homes FY 2024 Lead-Based Paint Reduction Grant from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute any necessary documents necessary to accept such grant, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
Thank you. Ms. Turner?
Yeah, just a couple of things. This is a competitive grant through HUD. We have received this grant before, so we're excited to receive it again. The funds will allow us to continue our program to reduce lead hazard reduction for an additional 150 households, as well as increase contractor capacity and educate caregivers, medical professionals, and community members on the importance of lead prevention. So once again, we're excited to receive this grant again.
Thank you. Any additional questions or discussion? Mr. Nash?
Quick comment. I agree with what much of Ms. Turner just said. I'm very happy to accept these funds because the effects of lead on our youth, on our children, especially during the early developmental phases of their life, have lifelong impacts on their ability to, access education and just, develop cognitive function. And I was curious as to how many houses we've done. And since the program was started in 2003, 536 homes since 2003. So kudos to all of our folks with the city that helped to make this happen and to help make those homes a little bit safer for families and especially for the children that live in those homes.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the ordinance is adopted. Item C is the acceptance and appropriation of the donation from Branch Management Corporation for the Beautify Roanoke Interchanges Through Enhancement, or BRIGHT, sponsorship funding. There is an ordinance, and I'll entertain a motion and second.
Move the ordinance.
Second.
Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
An ordinance accepting a donation of funds from Branch Management Corporation to the City of Roanoke as part of the Beautify Roanoke Interchanges Through Enhancement Program to assist with maintenance of landscaping in the southeast quadrant of the roundabout located at Riverland Road Southeast, Bennington Street Southeast, and Mount Pleasant Boulevard Southeast, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute any necessary documents, provide any additional information, and to take any necessary actions in order to obtain, accept, receive, implement, use, and administer such donation, expressing the city's appreciation for such donation, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions? Mr. Volleson?
I would just say thank you to Branch Management. I know that they've moved into the offices over there that were the Kroger regional offices, and I'm glad to see them being great local partners with us, and really excited to see what the intersections will look like afterwards.
Other discussion? All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers? Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones? Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the ordinance passes. Item D is the execution of amendments to the contract with Mattern and Craig for engineering design services for Greenway connection at Riverland Road. There is one measure, a resolution. I'll entertain a motion and a second.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
A resolution authorizing the city manager's issuance of amendments to the city's contract with Mattern and Craig, Inc. for changes in connection with the work for the engineering design services of the Greenway along Riverland Road between the Garden City Greenway and the Roanoke River Greenway.
Thank you. Ms. Turner, do you have any additional comments?
No additional comments on this one, thank
Okay.
you.
Any comments from council? All right. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones? Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the resolution is adopted. Now I'll turn to our city manager, Ms. Turner, for any additional comments.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have 3 comments for today. The first comment, over the past several years, staff has worked diligently to preserve, save, treat the beautiful tulip magnolia trees that are at Fountain Walk in Elmwood Park, near the Franklin Road entrance. However, these trees have continued to decline to extreme insect damage and harsh growing environment. The multi-stemmed architecture of these trees have continued to be an issue, which have led to severe pruning and poor growth habits. As a result, these trees are going to be removed in phases over this coming year. The first phase of removal will include approximately 25% of the trees along the walkway being removed. Park staff have begun working on this effort. My second comment, the contractor working on the Mill Mountain Trails Development Project in partnership with the Parks Foundation will begin mobilizing later this week in preparation for the construction starting this week. With the initial work will focus on the Sidewinder and Wood Thrush trails. As of this week, the Riverland Road, trailhead lot is closed for the construction storage and access, but minimal disruption of the trail users is expected. A letter from the department was sent to residents of Walnut Avenue Southeast and Riverland Road Southeast to inform them of the project and its construction timeline. My third comment, on March 28th, 2025, we'd like to invite everyone to the 89th graduation ceremony for Law Enforcement Class 73. This will take place at 10 a.m. at the Academy Gymnasium, located at 5401B Barnes Avenue Northwest. So everyone is invited to that. And last but certainly not least, we do have the Public Matters follow-up, and Ms. Hedrick is here to provide an update on that.
Good afternoon, Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor McGuire, members of council. This should be a relatively quick report back this week. Last two council meetings ago, so the February 18th meeting, the students from Roanoke City Schools were here to speak about their trip to the NLC City Summit. And as the city contributed part of the funds for that trip, Ms. Powers had inquired where those would come from in the future, what that may look like moving forward. So this previous year City Summit was in Tampa, Florida, with a total cost of $14,000. And of that, the city paid about $10,000. So looking forward to next year's City Summit, I guess this year now, because we are in 2025. This year's summit will take place in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is obviously a little bit further than Tampa, Florida. So using that same model, the trip would cost about $25,000 for the same amount of people, which would be 8 students and 2 chaperones. That number has not been confirmed yet. They just kind of used data based on what had happened in the previous trip. So again, if the city covers that around 70% of the cost, it would be about $17,000 from the city side. Again, none of that is finalized. None of that funding has been kind of set aside yet. Those are just the numbers looking at the way that it has been done in the past. Secondly, at the March 3rd meeting, there were 3 representatives from the Refugee Immigrant Medical Association who spoke in regards to our refugee and immigrant community and their support of those communities. Obviously, with a lot of federal administration changes going on, there's been a lot of concern about those particular residents in our area. So these students offered a few ideas on policies and programs that Roanoke could consider implementing to show support and protection for those specific residents. So I met with these students on February 26th just to kind of get a better idea of some of the things that they had in mind and the feasibility of potentially implementing those in the city. So one of the ideas that I had already sort of looked into that they had recommended was the municipal ID program, which has been implemented successfully in Charlottesville, Virginia. Austin, Texas has also used an enhanced library card method, which basically these are all locally issued IDs, which provide just a legitimate picture ID, which a lot of people don't have. That could be used for accessing services, if you're interacting with law enforcement, public safety officials, all of those kinds of things. It just gives you an actual photo ID that is government issued, that can be accepted, especially within particular localities or municipalities. So there's a program, this was actually a nonprofit that worked with the city of Charlottesville called the Faith Action ID program. So in the last, I think they've been in operation for close to 8 years, and they've issued 30,000 ID cards. And one of the reasons that this idea was particularly interesting for us is this is not only very beneficial for our refugee and immigrant and foreign-born population, but these are often utilized for the elderly population, for our unhoused population, those that are recently returned from incarceration, just a broad range of individuals that for various reasons may have difficulty accessing like a federally or state-issued government ID. So our plan, I'm continuing to research this to reach out to some various localities and organizations that have helped with these types of projects. And my plan is to meet back with these students and a couple of their other members of their student association later this month to kind of see the progress on that and discuss the feasibility of that for us. And that is all that I have for today.
Thank you. Thank you for that report, Pat. I appreciate it.
Question?
Sure.
And I don't know if you know the answer to this, but the idea just came to my head. With any of these municipal IDs, are they able to use these to pay bus fares or, kind of like a touch to pay type of feature?
I don't know the answer to that. It's definitely something that we can look into. I know the Austin, Texas program, it's obviously an actual library card that can be utilized to check out books and those kinds of things. So I think it's definitely feasible that it could be utilized for different methods besides just a form of ID. But that's definitely something to look into.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually had a question for Ms. Turner, some of the comments you made. The first was on the tulip magnolia removal. I was wondering if we could consider, in place of what's there, I'm not sure if what's there is a hybrid or a native sweet bay magnolia, but the mayor and I met recently with some members of the Mill Mountain Garden Club, and I know there are a lot of people that helped with the Bee City USA designation back in 2022 who are eager to start supporting and seeing some progress on that, and I just wonder if we could consider native options for replacement in there, if it makes sense. I know they don't always make sense, but where they do make sense, they can sometimes save staff time. They don't often need as much care or watering. So that was my first question, is if that could just at least be part of the consideration for their replacement.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'll have a conversation with staff on that, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And then my second comment was in regard to your second note, which was about the Riverland Road area. And I just wanted to observe, I go down that road at least once a week to get to my mom's house. And I noticed the other day that there are increasingly more and more people walking along Riverland Road. And so from about Primrose, the sidewalk is not great down Riverland Road generally, but then it's non-existent as you pass out of that kind of neighborhood area and you hit 9th Street. And then the access point to the Mill Mountain Star Trailhead, I often tell people, encourage them if they really want a good hike or walk, they can take the Greenway to the Star Trailhead and then hike the mountain. But it's not really safe through there. It's kind of windy, and I appreciate the police officers for enforcing that 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. But I know we have a long list of sidewalk needs, but I just want to flag that that's an area, especially as we're continuing to encourage people to use the outdoor amenities as that area continues to grow in population. It's just kind of unsafe right now for people to get to the Dollar General or Tree, whichever it is, to Food Lion, to the trailhead. And I hadn't previously seen a lot of people walking that, but more and more I'm seeing, people on the side of the road or walking in the road, and just wanted to flag that as an area that strikes me as unsafe.
All right, thank you. What I'll do is, I'm not sure if it's already on our list or not, but I'll meet with staff and that'll be one of the updates that we'll provide.
Thank you very much.
Okay, other questions? All right, thank you. We'll move on to item 2, which is our city attorney, and we have a couple of, about 3 matters here. First is an amendment of ordinance numbers 43101-111824 and 43114-121624 to allow additional time for nonprofit organizations to file ordinances granting tax exemption with the city clerk. And there are 2 measures. We'll take them one at a time. I'll entertain a motion and a second on the first ordinance.
So moved.
Second. Okay. Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
Yes. An ordinance amending ordinance number 43101-111824, adopted by City Council on November 18th, 2024, allowing additional time for Wellness Wagon, a 401c3 nonprofit corporation, to sign and file ordinance number 43101-111824 with the city clerk's office as required for the exemption from personal property taxes on property it owns, which it uses to provide charitable services to the community, to be effective January 1st, 2025, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
Thank you. Mr. Spencer, would you like to elaborate a bit on this?
This is simply give an extension. We didn't get feedback in the time requested the first time, so we've made an extra effort to reach out, and on one of these, we've already received the documentation necessary.
Okay.
So we're asking that you please grant the extension.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Hagan?
Yeah, did Wellness Wagon reach out as to, at request additional time?
We just noticed that they hadn't done it within the time. We found it curious because the two people who have been granted are usually very responsive. So we felt like it might be a lack of, we needed to make a greater effort in our communication. So we've reached out both by phone and email again.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones? Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb?
Aye, and the ordinance is adopted. I need a motion and second on the second ordinance.
Move the ordinance.
Second.
And Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
I just want to see who moved on those? Okay. Okay, thank you. An ordinance amending ordinance number 43114, 121624, adopted by City Council on December 16, 2024, allowing additional time for Restoration Housing, a 401c3 nonprofit corporation, being the sole member of 530 Day LLC and 1018 Patterson LLC, to sign and file a copy of ordinance number 43114-121624 with the city clerk's office as required for the real estate tax exemption of real property it owns located at 530 Day Avenue, Roanoke, Virginia, and 1018 Patterson Avenue, Roanoke, Virginia, to be effective January 1st, 2025, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
Thank you. Any further questions? Mr.
Yeah, it's
Hagan.
the same question. Did, excuse me, Restoration Housing request an extension or reach out?
They're the ones that have responded already after the additional reach out. This is an individual who is extremely prompt on responding on every occasion. Therefore, we thought that perhaps the communication was, if we were better at it, to enhance and ask for the extension. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers? Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb?
Aye, and the ordinance is adopted. Item B is a resolution appointing 4 members of the Roanoke Neighborhood Advocates in a manner consistent with city code. There is one resolution, and I'll entertain a motion in a second.
Move the resolution?
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
A resolution appointing and establishing the member terms of the Roanoke Neighborhood Advocates.
Thank you. Mr. Spencer, do you have anything you'd like to add to this?
Just thank you, Mayor. I think we've worked out a method in working with Ms. Hunter to ensure that we've gotten the membership appointed to the RNA in a method that works best and organizes this in a smooth method. So I'd ask that y'all please approve this resolution.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? All right, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones? Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
Mayor Cobb?
Aye, and the resolution is adopted. Next, we'll receive a briefing on real estate from our Director of Real Estate Valuation, Mr. K.C. Bratton. Welcome.
Bless you.
Things usually go wrong when it's bad news. Not when it's good news.
You're fine. Get it worked out. That's encouraging. There we go.
All right. Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor McGuire, honorable members of Roanoke City Council, and Ms. Turner, I'm here to provide you with a general reassessment update from January. As you note, in January, we were projecting an increase of 8.23%. Post-appeals, we're projecting an increase of 8.17%, as noted in the letter that I sent out, the memo I sent out this morning. I just want to kind of go through the appeal process, what happened, and give you some ideas of what citizen complaints look like, okay? We had a total of 392 appeals this year, 150,655,000 contested values. If you look at it, it's roughly the appeal count was 86% residential, 8% commercial, and 6% multifamily. Overall appeals, we had 392. We sustained 264, and we decreased 126, and we increased 2. So the breakdown is as follows. For commercial, we had 33 appeals, 16 sustained, and 1 increase. Multifamily, we had 22 appeals, 17 sustained, and 5 decreased. And residential, we had 337 appeals, 231 sustained, 105 decreased, and 1 increase. The summary of our report is as follows. We had 392 appeals received in 2025, 0.9% of taxable parcels. We had 128 values were changed, approximately 33% of appeals. And just to give you give you background, in 2023 we had 28%, and in 2024 we had 35% change. Proposed changes in values represented a 0.5% change in gross taxable value. And just here's another area of comparison. In 2023, 2024, we had the same amount change. As far as the history of appeals, in 2024, we had 484 appeals. In 2025, we have 392 appeals. We're roughly down 19%. Key dates to remember, citizens should be receiving letters as of right now based on our they should receive notification of the current our decisions. The Board of Equalization, they have until April 7th to provide a Board of Equalization appeal. If you recall, the Board of Equalization is a member of a 3-panel body impaneled by the Circuit Court, and they are independent of our office, so if they appeal to them, they have an opportunity to hear somebody just other than our office, independent of our office, and we start those they have to have been by April 7th. And the commercial appeals are April 28th through the 29th. Those are our hearing dates for commercial. And June 23rd through the 27th. Those are appeal dates for residential. Any questions?
I have a question.
Ms. Powers?
So the ones that decreased and also the ones that increased, can you give us some examples of the ones that decreased?
Yeah, most of the decreases were based on just discovery. A lot of times, when they go through, we encourage everybody to look at their information on GIS in order to make sure we're actually doing, have the right information. So a lot of times on appeal, what they appeal is like condition or number of rooms, square footage. If we have them down for a finished area in the basement and we don't have it, they don't have it, then we actually go out and inspect those. So we've had a lot of those. It's just mostly discovery. It's what the process is meant to do, provide the citizens an opportunity to appeal based on the information that we have. And then as far as the increases, we only had 2, and one of them was a commercial increase and one was a residential, and it was the same thing, discovery. I mean, they just felt like we didn't have their property properly cataloged, and we addressed it in that process.
Another question I have is, I know you've been going to some of the neighborhood meetings and discussing this with them and just educating them. Are you going to all of the neighborhoods, or is it up to those neighborhoods, organizations to call you and get on their list? Because
We're aggressively trying to get into, have neighborhood meetings. We found that that's one of the reasons why we feel like our appeals are down. When you get folks the information, it's pretty easy for them to, ask questions. So when you're available, it makes it easier. So, and they feel heard. So we are trying to get in every neighborhood meeting. And even if we can appeal right now, if you have a meeting that you would like us to go to, we're more than happy to come out and talk about our process. And it doesn't have to be a neighborhood. It could just be, somebody having a meeting with a couple of their friends, coffee meetings. I'm open to that. They can come to our office. I think it helps to share our process with folks. It's in years past, you don't want to have a mystery. So if you share our process and we're open for that, I'm happy to do it. So one of the areas where we do suffer is we don't get a lot of commercial opportunities to talk to commercial owners. So we're looking to expand there. But any neighborhood meeting or any small group, we're happy to meet with.
I know the Old Mountain neighborhood is interested in getting you to come to one of theirs.
Yeah, be happy to do that. More than happy to.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bratton.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Casey.
All right, continuing on in our agenda, we have no reports of committees or unfinished business. Move on to motions and miscellaneous business. Are there any inquiries or comments by mayor and members of city council? I'll just give a brief update, as I like to do whenever we have a GRTC, Greater Roanoke Transit Company Board of Directors meeting, which we did today. A couple of updates. All three of our new electric buses are here. One of them has been wrapped. The other two are in process. The city's Fire-EMS has reviewed and gotten acquainted with these vehicles and have gone through extensive training. Last week, they trained all of the current operators on how to drive these electric buses. This week, they are doing route testing, so you may see a little taller buses. The electric buses are 11 feet 11 inches in size, whereas the regular clean diesel buses are 11 feet 3 inches. So there are a couple of routes where they will not be able to travel because of the height restrictions, but I believe it's only two. So you will likely see these, the electric buses out this week doing some route testing. On March 25th at 10:30 a.m., we will have an unveiling ceremony of these at 3rd Street Station, so I encourage you to please put that on your calendar and join us if you can. Again, that's March 25th at 10:30 a.m. at 3rd Street Station. Valley Metro is about to launch a brand-new website redesign, which is going to be much more accessible and navigable by citizens with a lot of great and helpful information. The applications for TPAC, which is the Transit Passenger Advisory Committee, they're receiving applications through the end of this month. Then once that application process closes, those applications will be sent to the GRTC board for review and then appointment. And I think that is all from that. Anybody else have anything? Ms. Sanchez-Jones?
I just want to say about the new website, you could get the whole content translated into whatever language you wish to have.
Yes.
So that was really nice.
There will be a button, I think, on the
Yes, on
top
the
of the
website.
home page that if you need a different language, you can just access it that way. Okay, we don't have any vacancies to fill today. So we are at the end of our 2 o'clock session, and the council meeting will stand in recess and reconvene tonight at 7 o'clock.